Hello, everybody. And you will have been very pleased to see that normally we would have started on Scottish time, bang on 10 o'clock, but because of the needs to deal with this blended technology and amplification in this big hall, instead we started on Melanesian time. And so we were being culturally sensitive in what we were doing and hopefully learning from your way of life in Melanesia and in Indonesia.
That's funny.
What am I hearing there? Folks, I want to talk about the importance of these small island states. I mean, you've got Papua New Guinea. When I was there, the population was 3 million. It's now, about 8 million, something like that. It's quite a small country. But then you get a place like Tuvalu, only 12,000 people. Why do these places matter? What's the significance of them? I can only say that small though they are, the Pacific Ocean covers a third of the Earth's surface. And the cultures of the Pacific, Micronesian, Polynesian, Melanesian, and then moving into the Indonesian, Indochina cultures, those cultures carry enormous richness, which transmits through here. Those of us involved in nuclear weapons issues, and I would distinguish sharply between nuclear energy and nuclear weapons here. Those of us involved in weapons, when I was involved in the Pacific, were involved in the Nuclear-Free Pacific campaign, and the voices of the people were so important. Similarly, in my work back in land reform back here in Scotland, it was what I learnt in Melanesia, particularly in Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and a brief visit to Vanuatu during the 1970s and 80s as a VSO volunteer that made a huge difference. And I vividly remember the day in the South Pacific Appropriate Technology Foundation, to which I was the financial advisor in the mid-1980s, Andrew Kaulini, who was from the Sepik area, neighboring onto Papua province in Indonesian Papua, Andrew Kaulini came back from a conference of South Pacific leaders around about 1985, and he walked very slowly into the office, and we could see something was wrong. So we all gathered round his desk to hear what had been going on in Tuvalu. And he looked at us and he said, if what we have just been told by the scientists are true, it is very bad news for South Pacific nations. And that was really the first time that climate change really hit home in my consciousness, although scientists have been talking about it since the 1970s, and even indeed a century before that. So how does that impact upon the villages? Because the village people are living with virtually zero carbon footprint. It's not their fault that this is happening. It's not their fault that sea levels are gradually coming up globally, irrespective of local issues. We have to be careful, because sometimes there are local issues that cause land to be increased or land to be decreased, tectonic movement in the Earth's surface, shifting coastlines and sedimentation. It's not always climate change that is the cause. But generally speaking, world sea levels rose by about 150 millimeters, that's 6 inches, during the 20th century, and they're now increasing at about 3 times faster than what they were when I was young. They're now 4 times faster. They're now increasing at 3.7 millimeters a year. In addition to which you have increased storminess in many parts of the world, higher wave heights as a consequence, and therefore more impact on coastal areas and fresh water. So what can village people do about it? And I want to pick up especially what Sharon was saying about the importance not of setting up new organizations of experts, because there's plenty of experts on this. We know what the experts are saying if we listen to the real science of such groups as the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. There is plenty of science about. We know what that is saying. But the experts we need to be communicating this, as Sharon said, are the schools, the health professionals, the Didi men, the agricultural extension workers, as they're called in Papua New Guinea, the churches. Sharon put a particular emphasis on the work of the churches. And in our work with the folk from Papua and West Papua provinces, it has been getting to that spirituality. 3 levels of spirituality. The indigenous animistic understandings of a world inhabited by spiritual entities, the Christian understanding for those who are Christian, and in the case of Indonesia also we've integrated in the Islamic understanding, which actually has a very strong environmental ethos underpinning it. So working with the spirituality of the people where they were, but also using that to teach what science is, how you evaluate science. Because for most Melanesian peoples, science has been one of the fruits of the white man's garden, as they call it. And it's very easy, if you're a Melanesian villager, to see claims of science as yet another cargo cult coming from the outside. Yet another form of evangelical preaching a prosperity gospels. This time it's masks and vaccines. And I follow closely Melanesian people on Twitter. That's how come Sharon is part of this today and why she's staying with us in Glasgow just now. That was a connection in that way. And every day I see doctors and other health professionals in Papua New Guinea despairing at the way in which the anti-vax and anti-mask movement. In Baroko Market, they were even burning masks to make a symbol. Now, where has that come from? Friends, that has come in as a cargo cult-like ideology, not from Melanesians, but from people in the West who try to draw attention to themselves on social media in order to make an impact. People who, unlike the experts, do not have a reputation worth not losing. I would appeal to you, therefore, to listen to the people you most trust, the spiritual teachers in your communities, in your churches, etc., who have a proven track record of being with the people, amongst the people, in solidarity with the people, but who are also well educated. Listen to these types of people. Listen to your health workers who see the consequences every day of people dying as they can't get enough air because of COVID. And then apply that also to climate change. This is why we need good primary school level, secondary school level science education in the villages, so that people can learn how to make sense of reality, so that people can learn to judge which voices to trust. Do you trust the account of somebody on Facebook? Or do you trust what scientists who have given their lives to this kind of work? Or your church leaders, in the case of most of Melanesia, who have devoted themselves to the people? You choose who to trust, but in assessing science, unless you are a scientist, and most of us, including myself, are not climate change scientists, unless you are a climate change scientist, choose carefully who to trust. Teach others how to do that. And like we've been seeing with what Maria was saying about groups learning from land reform here in Scotland, bring people back to what they learn and see in the land. Bring people back to their cultural values. Bring people back to what it means to make community. Because no matter what happens with a pandemic or with climate change, as Maria was saying, it is our humanity, our humanization, our ability to take care of each other that is going to see us through in the end. Thank you.